Guys, this is Invest Now America. This is part two of a podcast series. Again, just to give you a little background, this is a response I'm making to some lefty. I'm not going to give her full name. His first name is just Jessica. And she actually had a 1, 2, 3 response to something I'd written. And I said to myself, at first, I said, man, this is ridiculous. But then I said, you know what? I really started sort of feeling sorry for her. And I said, let me treat this with respect. And let me at least offer some guidance and information. Now, she gave a 3-part response to something I'd said. Basically, what I said is that leave the billionaires alone. They're not doing anything to you. The government's not your mama and the government's not your daddy. And billionaires, doesn't matter if they're what the billionaires do or don't do. It's not going to impact your financial situation. You're the master of your financial situation. That's it. And then the first response, she had said, education is not accessible to all at even remotely the same level, especially beyond high school. And I gave my response to that. I said, that's ridiculous. Well, I shouldn't have used the word ridiculous. If I in fact used the word ridiculous, I shouldn't have used that. I just said there's no evidence for that. You have no evidence for that. You can't make a rational argument based on evidence and facts to back up that statement. And that's why I really started to think maybe that's not exactly what she meant. Sometimes people, when they react out of emotion, they say things that they, just not well thought out, or some things they don't mean. And I tell you, if there's ever a group of people who act out of emotion, it's the lefties. So I responded to that, and let me just give some people some concrete advice or counsel. Here in Louisville, there are all sorts of education opportunities out there. Pick up the phone, contact Simmons University. Pick up the phone, contact Jefferson Community College. You can even pick up the phone and contact the mayor's office. Because at one time, the mayor's office had a program where they're trying to increase the pool of educated workers in the city of Louisville and the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And there are just all sorts of opportunities out there. And if you're not knowledgeable of the opportunities, well, that's one thing. But if you are knowledgeable and you don't pursue them, well, okay, that's fine. That's on you. But if you are knowledgeable that these opportunities exist and yet you still make a statement like this, it's questionable. Yeah, I sort of question that. All right, let's go to the second statement here. Your ridiculous and antiquated idea that someone should walk 500 miles and just be willing to work hard is all it takes to get out of poverty. Inflation has destroyed that possibility. Even with a $15 minimum wage, it's impossible for someone to work their way out of poverty. Look into any article on it in the last year. I recommend Bloomberg. Okay. So let's deal with that first sentence. Your ridiculous and antiquated idea that someone should walk 500 miles, quote unquote, walk 500 miles, quote unquote, and just be willing to work hard, quote unquote. Now, I made a reference to someone, and I made a reference to Booker T. Washington. Of course, many folks out there who are familiar with the history of black people in the United States know about Booker T. Washington. And you probably know a little something about his life story. He was born a slave. He was a slave. His parents were slaves. His siblings were slaves. After emancipation, Booker T. Washington, like so many black folk throughout the United States, who came out of slavery, vigorously pursued education. That's one reason why we have Simmons University. Go check out the history of Simmons University. Right here in Louisville, Kentucky. How did that school, that institution of higher education get started? Go check into that. Okay? So, and Booker T. Washington just one of many black folk who said, hey, I'm going to get an education come hell or high water, whatever I got to do. I want you to think about that. How dare someone say to me that my people's sacrifices to pursue an education is antiquated and ridiculous, that it is an antiquated and ridiculous idea. It is what Booker T. Washington is an example for all of us. Do what you got to do. Pursue that education. But I'd be daggone. I'm going to allow some racist nonsense that black people should not be applauded. I mean, applauded. That man, he was born a slave. He didn't have no 64 Civil Rights Act. He didn't have no welfare rights organization. He didn't have any of that. He just had a burning desire, a passion to further his education. And you want to tell me that his example is antiquated and ridiculous? I'm speaking to the general audience here. You have to be very, very suspicious of someone who says that, something like that. It's almost as if they don't want black people to say, look, what do I got to do to further my education? What do I got to do to make sure my sons and daughters, my grandchildren, my nieces and nephews are getting the best possible education? You got to question that. Booker T. Washington he decided to go to a place to further his education. He had no letter of acceptance. He said, this is where I want to go. They're educating black folk here. Education is important. Education is critical. So he up and traveled 500 miles based on a hope, a dream, a desire to further his education. A good part of that, he had to walk because he ran out of money, ran out of train money. He had to walk, sleep on the streets. He was determined to get to this place and say, hey, will you please let me in? Remember now, they didn't say, hey, book, he didn't get a letter in the mail. Hey, man, you've been accepted. Come on up. No. He just went there on his own in the hope and the dream and the prayer that once he got there, that they would accept him. Tuition money? Man, please. He didn't tuition money. He just said, man, I'll just work my way through. But somehow or another, that attitude, that passion is, quote, ridiculous and antiquated. Man, you got to be suspicious of someone who says that to black folk. You got to be suspicious. And then the last part here, just be willing to work hard. Wait a minute. Hold up. Ridiculous and antiquated when you talk about just be willing to work hard? Think about that, people. What we want to communicate to black folk in America, it's antiquated and ridiculous. Working hard. We don't want to encourage you folks to do that. We don't encourage black youth to have that kind of attitude. Right? Okay. But no, let's put this in okay. So to be fair to her, and just be willing to work hard is all it takes to get out of poverty. Well, that's part of it. First of all, we need to define poverty. Because the poverty you experience in the United States of America is not the poverty you could possibly experience in a place like the Philippines, or some other developing nation. People in the Philippines will tell you that. They'd be more than willing to tell you that. Section 8, food stamps, they'd be saying, what? Dude, what do you mean poor? I know people who've qualified for food stamps and all this other stuff, and they got cable. Dozens of channels and all. They got cable. Come on, people. What's poor? let's put it in context. Let's define that. What's poor? Seriously? Okay. But anyway, let's accept that. Is all it takes to get out of poverty? No, I don't think that's working hard is all it takes to get out of poverty, because if that's all it took to get out of poverty, my daggone grandmother on my father's side, and we're actually both sets of my grandmothers, would be multimillionaires because they work hard. They work hard. And their husbands worked, well, my one grandmother who was married, he worked hard too. They weren't wealthy, but they did see to it. But they were blessed in having their children, particularly their two sons, embark on highly successful careers. I mean, one of their sons, before he died, he finished his doctoral classes. The other son, 25 plus years in the military. He loved it. So they worked hard, and they're working hard and providing for their family and providing for their sons, including my Uncle Lawrence. Hey, those sons didn't fall. They did better than what their parents did. They did better. They worked hard. But I agree with you. Working hard's not enough. I totally agree with you on that. I completely agree with you on that. Getting out of poverty, yeah, you can do, yeah. I mean, further, get your high school diploma, further your education or training, stick with your job, stop having, a bunch of kids out of wedlock. If you want to get married, stay married. Those kind of things are critical. I agree with you on that. It's not just working hard. You also need to have your money working for you. Working for your money, that's, you work hard, you put in all these long hours. But if you're not investing your money in such a way that your money is working for you, you're not gonna accomplish wealth. You're not going to have much of a net worth. I completely agree with you on that point. Completely agree with you. Now, I don't care if you're a maid. I don't care what you do. I don't care if you're out there picking fruit. I don't care if you're a sanitation worker. I don't care if you're an LPN. I don't care if you're a police officer. I don't care if you're a registered nurse, an attorney. I don't care. I don't care if you're a manager at Speedway. I don't care if you're an assistant manager at Thornton's. You should always be taking a portion of your money that you worked hard for and investing that money into an asset that's producing money for you. One of the easiest and most convenient and successful assets that you can buy is stocks. Period. Everybody and anybody who's listening to my voice right now, I don't care what your income level is, you should have a stock account. If your company is offering you a 401k, you better jump on it and max it out and keep it that way. Buy stocks, max out your 401k. What else is there? Look at buying real estate investment trusts. Look at the possibility of buying property. Things like that. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Working hard is not enough. That's part of it. That's the foundation. The second thing, make sure you're managing your money properly. Stay out of debt. If you can stay out of debt, stay out of debt. If you can get out of debt 100%, get out of debt 100%. Debt is bad. There are three things that are, in my view, as an entrepreneur and as a conservative, what I would almost call borderline evil. Debt, inflation, and taxes. I can't stand those three things. Why? Because it takes away your ability as an average, as an American from building wealth. Those things don't help you build wealth. They hurt you. They hurt you when it comes to building wealth. Taxes, debt, and inflation. Oh, I'm with you 100% on that one, girlfriend. Inflation has destroyed that possibility. Even with a $15 minimum wage, it's impossible